Welcome back to part 6 of He Loves Me, He Loves Me Not. And there was a lot for me to think about after making the video and just kind of what all that looks like, I guess. So, yeah. So okay. Well, let's. I don't know why this came to my mind, but let's talk about the elephant in the room real quick. So, what the hell is going on with my hair, with his hair? What is going on? And it's kind of funny because hair and styling it and all that changes through history. What was cool at one time is going to make you pretty much completely uncool at another time. And then that one fades away too. And I was thinking about it, and I thought, there's some really, really smart people and crazy people, but smart people in history that if we look at photographs of them, they had what I would call for a hairstyle I don't give a shit, and that's like the least important thing to worry about. Now, I'm not trying to say that I'm famous or that, but between the way that this state that I've been in, this mental health state, I don't care. Does it matter? I don't care. And the other thing that's funny is if I was to care about that, like get all polished or whatever, presentable, and yet I'm completely the material that I'm talking about is completely opening up the inside of me to the deepest level, the core of my being, and exposing things that most people would definitely not ever expose. They take it to their grave. When I think about it that way, the hair is the least important thing. It's not a concern. And quite honestly, it's styled in such a way. We'll call the style exposed or exposure, because that's really what's happening here. With this stuff. I can't convey the good that I think I'm getting out of it. Like no one really needs to see it. It's like getting it off your chest. But I know it's real. Like, you could. Well, like my psychiatrist, or all the people say, "Oh, do you journal?" But I mean, the journal gets it out of your head. Remember, I can't write because of whatever that portion of my life. Um, but it doesn't expose it necessarily. It just takes it from the hidden to paper, I guess, and then I guess you fill that one up and you kind of close it, hide it away. And do not read my journal or what. I mean, you don't expect the goal is not to share it. Okay, would you say that's fair with a diary? I would say, or journal. I'd say that's very fair. But sometimes they get found, and maybe after you pass, they get found, and so there's a little bit of they might get seen. So I could see that, but I think the difference here, and I'm not necessarily looking for anyone to view these. Okay, this portion, especially when I really started sharing that I'm a numbskull and a juvenile delinquent and a juvenile adolescent. That was, yes, to kind of balance the story, to get truth out there. Remember I talked about the video about truth and lying, but to get real truth, where you include all of it. So I think it was important to add, to the story. But the difference between what I'm doing, and I'm sure, there's like no original thought or idea, but the difference between what I'm doing and journaling is I know it's out there. I may not expect it to be read, like, oh, famous, no. But it's out there. And to be very blunt about it, it was pretty much no different than showing my stepmom my nuts. I know that was graphic or whatever, but I mean, it's out there. And it will get seen. It's not a if, it will. And from looking, there's been some C's already, which is an interesting place to be. It really is. So I don't know. I've kind of maybe talked about that, identified that enough. So part 5, it's kind of weird because all the other parts were like one location, one house that we lived in or whatever. They all kind of fit. This house is not the same. There's a tremendous more stuff. And like I said, some of it is absolutely boring, of no value to the audience. But that's the general audience is not, you guys are not necessarily the first, person this is for. It's I would say in order, it's for me because I'm learning stuff about myself, not like new memories, but just I'm challenging myself by doing this, like as in comfort and just all kinds of stuff. I'm learning. I'm learning to think about things in a way that I've never thought about them before by bringing them to the surface like this and talking about. And one of those things would be and I never liked the word victim, because victim is kind of like food stamps. It very, very quickly turns into about me and entitlement in that. I think you guys can think of examples of both ways, a true victim and then everybody do everything for me. I remember this happened to me, anyway. But in my mind, I was the victim. Basically, of the trauma, and everything that I kind of associated with mental health, I would say was primarily derived by my childhood trauma. It was easy, and this is making me, for the first time, think, did I have any involvement in it? Was I responsible for any of it? And to anyone who's watched the last video may immediately go, yes, you needed your ass beat, you needed thrown in prison, you needed rehab, I get it. So after, like me, still me is very selfish, those two reasons. The third one is still about me. As someone who's absolutely prized learning all their life, it's my ring, my precious, my learning. Well, in order to learn, you have to remember. And my memories are deteriorating. I could absolutely say that. I could feel it. And there are times it's not so much about this older stuff, and I think that's because of the trauma or the grandiose of it that surrounds it. But I am a lifelong learner. I learn many hours a day, many. I would say bare minimum. I mean, it's been pretty extensive lately, but at my lowest, it's 2 to 4 hours of learning a day. Right now, I'm probably 8 to 15 hours of learning new topics, expanding topics, and it feels good. So you're like, well, how can you do that if your memory, you say, is going? The only way I can describe it is there's like a hole, and I can feel it pouring back out. And I think it would be substantially worse if I wasn't, making new connections and new, inferences to the new data that's coming in, to be able to cling on. Because I still have this theory that your memories, and this is absolutely my belief, do not go away. I don't care who you are, they're in there. They may get, calloused over, if you will, or damaged, but it didn't leave. It didn't leave that spot. Even like in a car accident, it didn't leave. They're in there. The retrieval process becomes broken, and the memories get kind of camouflage, like a booby trap. They get camouflage over them, and so you're right there, and you're right in the place, and you're there to retrieve the memory, and it's gone, or it's partially gone. But I really don't feel that a memory just, I don't know, like vanishes. I could be wrong. I've had a lot of memory stuff, the ECTs and drugs, and I meant pharmaceutical. But anyway, so this is number 6, and number 6 is going to be probably either, I don't know if I'll have the stamina, but it's going to be the longest video possibly that I do, because I'm already like 15 minutes into it, and that was just kind of a dumb introduction. But at that house on Ensenada Street, the same house that my father passed away in, the same area where you heard of where I really ramped up into my criminal life, I want to share, I guess I would say, the context, the house, the friend structure some more, just different memories. And this may take 1 or 2 videos to do this portion. I don't know, I may surprise myself and be done in 5 minutes. But when I get done with this one, okay, so we had like, I'm an idiot, should be in jail, a gangsta. Then we have what is, draw me the houses and give me some context. What did life look like surrounding this time period? And that, like I said, that'll be 1 really long video or 2. And then the next video is going to be what I'll call the trauma, okay, for this location. As you've noticed already, I have not shared any suicide attempts, like where I've done on the other ones where I've gone into detail. And that is because this is the first, this is the scene, this is the first location of my first, and watch, I'm going to do this, my first suicide attempt. Now, wait a second, I'm not going to talk about that, but that's at this house because I want to keep the suicide thinking, despair, I want to keep them as their own videos. Okay, so it'll probably say suicide attempt versus failed suicide, and then probably a number 1, and then I will list, I'm not telling you, I'll list my method. So as I was thinking last night, I'm like, because as I'm thinking about, number 5 video, and I'm thinking about number 6 video, I was thinking, these 3 things that you're going to be talking about don't go together. Number 1 doesn't seem to mesh with number 2. And by the way, how does the trauma one, let's call it number 3, wait, time out. You're not 100 and some years old. And this was not that long of a time period. How? I don't get it. And that's good. Don't get it, because I didn't get it. I was trying to figure it out. Which is where some of the growing and learning about myself is taking place. And I'll tell you exactly what I came to. And probably the origin, the origin, not the origin, because it would have happened earlier, but I was trained from little to be 2 of me. And I'm not saying I have multiple personality disorders, okay? I don't think that's the case. But I very much had separate identities, okay, if you will. I know that's probably a little bit much, but I think you'll hear me out. In some circumstances, I was this. And in another circumstance, I was this. And yet, in other circumstances, I was another. So there's, and I think that the reason mine seems so shocking is because just how maybe polar different, they may seem, or how like they may not, like they're puzzles from a, pieces from a different puzzle kind of thing. And I think that's really, really just the case because of the just how extreme uh, I lived that. See, this really started at a young age, and I know other people my age would have something like this. Like basically, seriously, you kind of get your ass whooped or whatever as a child, and it almost immediately they're expecting you to get yourself together, not cry and pull yourself together. And it wasn't because you're a man and you shouldn't show up. No, it was. So I think that thinking was more commonplace than a person thinks. But obviously, in my household, with some of the examples, it just kept amplifying, and it was a desirable trait. Okay, and the better you got at doing it, there was reward for it. When I got completely beat or whatever it was, uh, as soon as you could get the underwear and the pants pulled back up and the shirt pulled down, and and get the snotting and the eyes not red, and quit crying. Basically, as soon as you could present yourself as someone else, then you could go outside and play or whatever. Life went on then. Okay, you weren't stuck in the game. Well, I I said it right there. The better, the better you got at doing that, you basically were rewarded. And as the game and the ante uh, continued to rise, you would continue to get better at honing your skills. And for me, where I really was socially awkward, sitting alone or bouncing that ball alone on the playground kind of thing, it didn't take long to learn that identity, okay, didn't work. Not for my audience, not for the crowd that I was in. And I think if you listen to some of that last video where I was talking about, uh, especially with the drugs and whatnot, I power was part of it. Money was part of it. But the number one thing from that was acceptance. I changed my identity. What was this identity? This identity is the one that was desired. The one that people wanted. The one that said, "Hey, let me pick you up and we'll go to, go here. Let me pick you up and we'll go to this party." And obviously at this age, it seemed favorable with with the ladies. And so you just get better at it. And you just improve your technique. And I think you guys, the audience, do this too. I think probably everyone does this. I just don't know if you think about it, or if it obviously goes to the extent mine goes. But what it does do is nobody those other identities, one of your identities is going to be home. It's you, okay? And pretty much for me, no matter what I've done in my life, the fallback real identity is the kid that nobody wanted on their team, didn't no girl would go to the dance, played the bounce ball by myself, just a lot of things. That I believe is my natural state. And what I think happens is when you go to another state, okay, or your identity or whatever, we put on that my vocabulary is usually bigger, persona. We put that on, or as like I've liked to said for many, many years, is I put on my mask. I put on my mask because I know what society wants. I know what is desirable to be accepted in a particular setting. And so I put that mask on. And that mask allows me to display what people want to see. All the meanwhile, I'm this scared, awkward, shy boy, And like I said, this is when you're not in your natural state, you're probably doing the same thing. But know this, the further I deviate from my natural identity, the better mask I need. And the more energy it takes to put it on and maintain it. Because the baggage from your other identities come with you. The one that tugs the hardest on you is obviously your natural identity. And I know this, you're kind of like, all right, I get the point. But I think we all do this. And we for sure do it with drugs and alcohol. Yep. We for sure do it with money. We do it for sure with our material possessions. We do it for sure with our job, title, status. We do it for sure with our trophy children. Think about it. Don't run and get mad. You were fine with the first two. Everyone knows somebody gets drunk or high and out comes this other person. The light of the party. Wait, he's not normally funny. Now he's funny. right? But these other things do it too. And so what I'm starting to realize by doing this and throwing away, okay? That's what throwing away, right? I'm throwing away my masks. Oh yeah. Think about it. I'm throwing away my gangbanger drug dealing mask, right? I'm laying out my trauma, and I'm throwing away my trauma mask, because they're not a mask if you know about them. Right? Right? Follow me on this. Is this true? Is this true? It's true. I got to get another mask. One that you don't know about. Once these things are out here, I have to get a new mask. I have been cut to the core to my natural state, my natural identity. That boy on the playground. And so even though this stuff is spooky and it's out there and it's embarrassing and it's like, seriously, for the audience, how many of you would do this? Right? No. But in a way, it's the hard thing. It's the hard thing. If I do the hard thing, then, and the masks are gone, for example, I might be able to go to church tomorrow. Because my masks are thrown away. And I already did the hard thing. I did this. I did the brave thing. I did the thing that other people aren't willing to do. And I'm going to say I'm special. I didn't know I was supposed to do this. I didn't know this would be the result. I had no idea. But it, I don't know. In the church, we used to always say, find some quiet time. Find some quiet time. I laugh. It's not a joke. I'm not making fun of it, but it's a thing, right? You know, you pray, you're quiet, there's a time of reflection. And I'm just telling you, just so far, and I'm not done yet, but just so far, it's been feeling pretty good. And maybe it'd feel good for you too. I don't know, you know. Something about the how's it go? Say the truth, and or the truth sets you free. I don't know. Maybe I look back. I look back at that saying and see how maybe there's some dude just like this doing it in one of them fancy pens with a feather on the top, writing this crap out. I don't know, but it seems like it would fit. The truth will set you free. Now, on my other video, I talked about lying. Okay, I'm a liar and you're a liar, and I believe that. And then I kind of also went on the computers because that's me kind of geeking out. But this lie falls underneath not the full truth. Okay, if we look at video 5 and the stuff that I've shared, or we go back in those videos, if we look at the stuff that I have shared, I'm not saying this is the right way of doing it. I'm just kind of food for thought. I shared them, right? All of them. So it was no longer a half-truth or missing data. Oh, where have you been? Oh, I was just at the mall with my boyfriend, except that part doesn't get said. Remember, lies, not telling the complete truth, right? We hide stuff. But is that a lie? I don't know. You may say, well, they didn't need to know that information. And I agree, there's probably situations like that. Why the hell do you need to know about my video number 5 in this series? And have I been lying all this time, all these years, by not sharing it, not getting it off my chest? I don't know. But I can tell you I've carried it. I've carried it. I've carried that mask, that went along with it. I've carried the guilt, the shame, the highs, the lows, the lessons. I've carried all of it. But yesterday, I took that stuff and I emptied it out, and I set it down. And I won't be carrying it in the same way anymore. Because part of me before, and I think you have this too, if we're honest, you're afraid of someone finding out. And that's part of the weight. And last night I set that down. I set down the stuff in 1, 2, 3, and 4, just as well as 5. And it feels good. That's probably the longest intro I've done. I'm gonna leave it. I think it was necessary. That was crazy town. Like, I don't know. I was throwing file folders out. You know what I mean? I was emptying the file cabinet, and maybe you didn't need to hear about it, but I needed to talk it out. So that's what we just did. Okay, so back to this neighborhood. We lived on Ensenada. We finally was not slumming it. We'd finally made it in life. I wouldn't say that I felt we were rich, but I mean, that's a pretty expensive house back then, as was all the surrounding neighbors. Beautiful brand new neighborhoods, just one right after another. I mean, they couldn't build them fast enough, just like nowadays. And you could make a comic or whatever out of this or whatever. But we're moving in, and it was the classic stereotyping of Mormons. because Mormons are uh, pretty heavily populated in Mesa, where we were, that whole area. And I don't know, probably every sixth or eighth home was a Mormon family. So like I said, it was, and you know, it was different because it was like, oh, hey, I see you're moving in. How are you? Oh, we love you, and let me help you carry that. And you know, here's some cookies and a casserole that we made for you. Gosh, we're so glad you came to the neighborhood. What do you do? And do you love Jesus? No, I don't know. but yeah, it was like, and quite honestly, that never stopped the whole time we lived there. And that wasn't the case, in none of the previous places. It was, I don't know, it was more like go home and bunker down, and I don't know. Yeah, so and Mormons, they have like as many kids as Catholics, used to anyway. And so there's a ton of kids in these families, and wouldn't you know it, there's always one your age because there's so many of them. So there's ones that lined up with my age, and there's ones that lined up with my brothers and sisters' age, and that's just perfect. And there's plenty of casseroles and cookies, and having you over for food and family home evening, and gosh, what was Wednesday? Oh, Wednesday night, hey, come with us up to church for, I can't remember what it's called, whatever the Wednesday thing is, and oh, come with, we'll pick you up. Oh, it'll be great. And the kids, and they're inviting you. There's like toddlers. They're like, come to church with us. Love Jesus. It starts young, and you feel welcomed, and you feel part of something, and you feel loved and appreciated. And I end up, that finally grew on me, and me only. Okay. Um, the doing the activities, just participating and all that. By far, I was the the only one in my family that was doing that, and they allowed it apparently, because I would think my parents would say no if not. But remember, my dad already knew about this religion because of Utah. I have no memories of his feeling on it. Attaboy, good deal, go Joseph Smith. There, but I have no memories of him saying you can't go, and so I did. And so I met and made friends with another group of people, okay, which was kind of one of my masks, if you will, because Mormons are different, like the religious type deal, and so the more that you're like them, the more you fit in and included and all that, and especially with the lady friends, the more you look like you're going that direction, the more you're dating material, or at least kissing material, or whatever they were into. So yeah, you well, not you, but me, I stepped up and into that spot, and I made a lot of good friends, and for the most part, like for the 95%, nobody knew about my other identity. You know, the thieving and Grand Theft Auto or whatever, and the smoking and the being a drug I can't even think anyway. Drug dealer, you know. That was so you start keeping secrets. You start living multiple identities, and you're careful to not let your groups mix, not let your behaviors mix, because they're incompatible. They're like water and oil. They're different. And you want to be loved and desired and by both groups. I mean, I don't want to kid you. Of the little kids hanging around with the Mormons, I was the most Billy Badass. You know, by far. And a lot of them found that desirable, you know, with their really, what do you want to call it, suppressed or whatever, you know, religion, that these things were cool, you know, they were desirable. But I never, you know, purposely pushed or tried to do, you know, cross lines, and I learned so many things from these people besides the story of Joseph Smith and Brigham Young. The gentleman up the street, he had some kids, quite a few of them that were close enough in age, and most of them all brought something to the table. And I was just like, for me, and one of them was very, very good with electronics. And I'm not talking a little bit, okay? I'm talking a lot. Like, you know, I'm talking like high school, and he's seriously repairing people's TVs out of the house, repairing the VCRs. What else would have been in their radios, you know, aligning the images and replacing parts. It was just like, that was just him doing his thing. And I was curious as can be, because I've had these things open before. And so I was curious, you know, what does this do? What does that do? Oh, it makes, that's, you know, especially with the TVs back then. And how does a VCR work? And I learned a lot about electronics and electricity from this individual. So that was probably my second large step, you know. And this tied in obviously directly with like stealing cars and breaking in homes. It was the same thing, alarm systems, disabling and getting around so you could, you know, steering columns and wires and starters. And I could make the connection immediately. And yeah, we had Radio Shacks there, and I was building circuits, and this gentleman on his bedroom door, he had a keypad, you know, a 10 keypad, and if you typed in the right code, the door would open. Otherwise, it was normally locked. That was cool. And I did that to our brand new house, brand new door, also for my bedroom. And it was really cool. You learned about solenoids and you learned about circuits and you learned, I mean, and I don't know, we, I'll tell you one of the crazy things that we did, that particular family, which was like five-ish, six-ish houses away. We had cable TV. They did not. So we ended up buying, I don't know what it was, like 1,000 foot of coaxial cable. And I've learned a lot of stuff since then. And we strung it from my house through the backyard, up the block wall. And of course, we couldn't have it where you could see it. So there was a canal behind our house. And so we made these little hangers out of clothes hangers. And they went in the cores of the block, and then they were bent, and they hooked, and they held that cable. And so that cable behind the wall, and it was way tall on the backside, much taller than the 7-ish feet on our side. It was more like 10, 11, 12. I don't know. It was tall. And that thing loop-de-doop, and it went in. And those boys around my age had cable TV. I also, at this point, learned more about cable TV because we didn't necessarily have all the channels. And I learned back then about filters and the way they did cable back then. And ours were in green boxes. Some were in green boxes flush with the ground. But you would open up the cable box for the approximately 4 houses, and you would find yours, and you would unscrew all the filters, and then you would screw it back together, and you would have all the channels because there'd be no filters. And they didn't just unscrew willy-nilly. There was a lock that we had to figure out how to bypass. Not a lock to get into the unit, so to say, but a lock to do it. And, time, patience, whatever you want to say, eventually you figure out how to make a tool, and, you could unscrew it. And so eventually we didn't really need cable coming from our house to their house, for example, or anyone's house, because we would just open the box and take off the security type deals with our tools and connect them together. And depending on what filters you had in line is what you would or would not have for channels. Then later, we didn't really get in trouble for it, but later they must have caught it when they were upgrading other people's, or who knows, maybe my parents added channels, or maybe they called in and said, why do we have all these channels? I don't know. But we eventually learned to basically bypass the filters. So the filters were still in place, but the signal just went straight through them. So visually you're like, oh, they're good. Yep, HBO is filtered out, Cinemax is filtered out, Showtime's filtered out, just. But it wasn't. There was a pool that was the same name as the junior high that I went to. So the junior high right there, you could see the junior high from our house. That's how close it was. And it was called Fremont or whatever. And behind it was, I don't want to say it was an Olympic size pool, but it was for real. It was the biggest pool I'd ever seen in my life. And we, our parents must have had season passes or something, because we, and I say we like brothers and sisters and stuff, and I would take them. I do remember that. We lived there, okay? We absolutely lived there. And you would think that would be enough pool time. But we figured out that we could hop the fence at night and just go swimming anytime we wanted. As long as you're reasonable quiet, it's kind of out in the middle of a desert, and you were good to go. And we did a lot of that. Like, I mean, a lot of times. Like, I don't know, 25 or 50 times. I mean, it was kind of just a thing we did. And I remember, this is where I said I brought bad ideas, but they weren't as bad as they could have been. But I had this idea about dyeing the pool. So we ended up going to wherever, like a Walmart or something, like a store, and we bought all the black dye that they had, and we took it to the pool, and we dump it all in, and it turned the entire deep end black until it went away. The pool was a honey badger, and it didn't give a crap. And so that was kind of a disappointment, but Dad, and I guess you would say I was into still the remote control cars, and still into, well, new thing was model rocket engine, or model rockets, I guess. And we got into that, and we would go out at times. I do have some memories of that. We would go out and launch them, and pretty much they'd always go so high, and with the wind you would never find them in the sagebrush or whatever they would call it out there. But I have memories of that. But being a juvenile delinquent, I had to take that and make it more. So the very first house, well, there was no house, but the very first lot on the other side was empty, and it was the one right by the four lane with the turn lane type busy intersection. We put one of them model rockets in there in a piece of PVC, and it must have been 20 foot long, because there was all kinds of building materials laying around in a new subdivision like this, and we propped it up towards traffic, and then we had a grand old time of launching not rockets but just the engines for them, basically like fireworks, but no stick, but bigger. And I know it came to light that we didn't have any more igniters, which was this special little thing, and it had these legs, and you'd hook to it to put the power into it from a special magical box to ignite them. And that's where my good buddy in electronics taught me that that's nothing special. And so he proceeded to find some thin gauge wire for the rest of our evening to light these off, and a 9-volt battery. And if you put it across it, they glowed, kind of burned, kind of singed your fingers a little, but they would glow, and that would be enough heat to ignite that rocket. And there was all kinds of little stuff like that. Yeah, and I guess this same gentleman, the electronics gentleman, well, he was the only one old enough to drive, and so we definitely did tons of cruising, and he had a Pontiac Fiero, and so did his sister. Uh, and we would go riding around that. We would just cruise, and explore trails out in the desert. And those little cars were pretty badass. And they were rear powered. And basically, they were like little drift cars back then. And we would do that, but that wasn't enough fun. We would actually climb up on I would say it's the trunk, but it's really the cover for the engine. And we would hold on for dear life, one to two of us. And he would do donies, sometimes in the dirt, sometimes in I remember one time at the school in the parking lot, and we would just hold on for dear life, and it was fun as can be. And you could see the exhaust just start glowing, because you could see that down through that cover that we're holding on to. It would just start glowing orange, But there's lots of good memories. I had a job. I had more than one job while I was at that location, but I worked at Taco Bell. So did he, and I loved it. I really did. I loved it. And I remember the reason, and I skipped a little bit in the story, but one of the reasons I got the job is she was like, "Oh, you're a farm kid," because I was from Iowa, and I had, I on my application I put that I worked on a farm, which was absolutely true. And this fell during a time period when I went to go live with my mom. Okay, and so there was a time period in there when I did that, which tells you it was my doing, my request, because I haven't touched on the other side, yet, and it wasn't it surely wasn't perfect, and it was definitely another secret that was kept. I'm going to stop there, and then I'm going to let all those little pathways connect and give me more, because there, like I said, this will, plus I didn't waste, but I talked over something at the beginning, and so it'll give me some of the other things, because I want to, I guess I want to not put on like it's fake. I want to express or expose or share this one enough, this kind of I wasn't perfect, and my parents didn't think I was perfect, but it was good enough to fit in, and I want to develop that just a little bit more. So once again, I guess you've made it to the end of part 6, which I think is good in the beginning. I think that was good conversation. Anyway, thanks for tuning in, and if you want to, I guess, see how the rest of the apparently long story goes, tune back into number 7. All right.